One springtime, 6 different students muse about their purpose and reason for being in school. They think about making connections this year as well as finally living for themselves. One morning on his way to school, Sako is browsing his phone until Yuwa taps his shoulder to greet him. Yuwa is plain looking but surprisingly popular in their grade. He shows Yuwa some comments on social media calling him a flirt, and Yuwa just tells him that it's the price to pay for being popular. Putting on a teasing grin, he asks Yuwa what part of him would make people jealous, and Yuwa plainly tells him that it's pretty much everything about him. They continue their way to school, and Yuwa shows him the new class list, happy that they are once again classmates. However, Sako sees that all their friends are also sharing the same class, which makes Yuwa pout since he doesn't seem too happy with the news. When they enter school, they are immediately greeted by Yuko, who is considered the idol of their grade. Sako and Yuko playfully flirt with each other, which causes Yuwa to tell Yuko that Sako was checking out the new girls. This makes Yuko feel creeped out, and she uses Yuwa as a shield. Sako tells Yuko that she's jealous because he isn't flirty with her, which earns him a jab from Kaito, the ace of the basketball team. Kazuki, a member of the soccer club, chimes in that Sako needs to be stopped, otherwise he won't stop flirting with girls. With his usual group together, he starts off their cheer, and they all put their hands together, calling out different names of their group, and cheer to start the day. Entering the classroom, they are then greeted by Haru and Yuzuki. He notes that Haru is a member of the basketball team and one of the best players, while Yuzuki is also a member but has a similar charm to Yuko. Yuwa tries to get their attention since she hasn't spoken to the two girls before. Suddenly, Sako realizes they haven't joined the group yet and welcomes them, but the two girls also add their own creative nicknames to the team. They begin to laugh, and some students smile at how close they are, but Sako notices that a few students are giving them nasty looks. Classes soon begin, and Sako notices that Korra is once again his homeroom teacher. Haru is pleased since Korra doesn't seem as strict, commenting that she doesn't want to be told off about how she wears her uniform since she's always in a hurry to get dressed after practice. Korra then calls Sako to lead the class for elections. He confidently goes to the table and jokingly introduces himself as Korra's maid, even faking a curtsy to add to the joke. To break the ice, he tells the class that people call him a flirt behind his back. The class bursts into giggles and even jokes back with him. While most of the class are smiling, some look irritated with his showmanship. He then asks if anyone has suggestions for the president role, but the class decides that he should take the position since he's a natural at it. When deciding on the vice president, Yuko immediately volunteers, claiming that she'll do better this year, even though last year she dumped most of the work on Sako. Joining Sako at the front of the class, she introduces herself, and Sako tells everyone that they hope to have a good year together. After class, Sako heads to the rooftop, where he catches Korra smoking. He reprimands Korra for smoking, but the teacher reassures him that it's fine. They chat lightly about how both of them are seen as villains by some people before Sako decides to ask why Korra needed him. Korra pulls out a photo of Kenta, a student who stopped going to school. He adds that Kenta likes anime, and Sako feels confused as to why he was given such seemingly useless information. Korra explains that only kids can understand the troubles of other kids. Sako realizes that Korra wants him to convince Kenta to come back to school. He asks if there's a way for him to refuse, but Korra knows that Sako won't. He points out that Sako has too much main character energy and that he'd want to play the hero. After school, Sako sees Asuka by the riverbank and decides to approach her. It seems Asuka is expecting him, and they begin to make small talk about the book she is reading. As they talk, Sako recalls his first meeting with Asuka. He was about to scold some kids for playing by the riverbank and getting dirty when suddenly Asuka jumped into the water, asking to join their fun. The kids immediately took a liking to her and began splashing around with her. Sako had been intrigued by Asuka that day. He stayed until the kids eventually left so he could hand Asuka a towel to dry off. As Asuka tried to dry her hair, Sako asked what she had decided to play with the kids. He told her that a better solution would have been to pick the kid up from the water and scold the ones who pushed him in instead of encouraging them to play together. Asuka reasoned that her way turned out better since all 3 kids ended the day as friends. Sako felt it was weird since Asuka ended up getting dirty herself. Asuka felt that it was more fun to join them. Mesmerized by her thought process, Sako asked for her name, and when he learned it was Asuka, he felt it perfectly fit her free spirit. In the present, he begins to complain about how Korra is making him run an errand again. Asuka explains that it's because Sako is perfectly imperfect and starts making analogies about how he works. To make Sako understand, she asked him if his female best friend and she were to drown, and if he were in a kayak, who would he save? Sako answers that it wouldn't matter because one could hold onto the kayak while he saves the other. Asuka then makes the question harder by saying there are sharks and piranhas in the water. Sako complains about how unrealistic the situation is. Asuka tells him confidently that if it were her, she wouldn't hesitate to save Sako because she likes Sako more. Sako teases that Asuka should have chosen a more romantic setting to confess, but Asuka ignores his implication, stating that she's aware Sako would give up the kayak and sacrifice himself because that would be the more beautiful ending. Later that evening, Sako observes the town from his balcony. He notices that half the town is probably asleep since it's already late. As he reaches out toward the moon, his thoughts drift to Kenta, wondering what he might be feeling. The next day at school, Yuzuki wants to speak to him and asks if he has gotten himself in trouble. Sako tells her about Kenta, and Yuzuki volunteers to join him. Sako declines her offer, saying that he has already asked someone to help. Yuzuki feels a little let down that it isn't her, but tells Sako that if he ever needs her, he can always ask. Sako waits by the bikes when he spots Yuwa, who ducks behind a wall to fix her hair before running up to him. When she asks why he chose her, Sako explains that people either like or hate him, but Yuwa can easily make people comfortable with her. Sako readies Kaito's bike, which he borrowed, and teases Yuwa about keeping her weight a secret, since she'll be riding on the back. Sako notices that she isn't sitting properly, but Yuwa argues that since she's wearing a skirt, she can't straddle it correctly. He instructs her to hold his waist or shoulder so she won't fall off. On the way to Kenta's house, Yuwa mentions that Sako's back feels really sturdy despite his appearance. Sako proudly tells her that he was once the best baseball player in their prefecture. Yuwa tells him that she's aware since she watched one of his championship games. Sako teases her that she must have been one of his secret fans before they became close, and to his surprise, Yuwa admits that she was. He then feels her hands slip to his waist. When Yuwa questions his silence, Sako teases that he's thinking of breaking suddenly so her chest would slam onto his back. This makes Yuwa place her hands threateningly around his throat as he swears he's only joking. Yuwa asks what their plan is with Kenta, and Sako admits that he has no idea since he doesn't even know him. Arriving at Kenta's apartment, they ring the doorbell and hear a soft voice answer through the intercom. They politely introduce themselves as Kenta's classmates and say that they come to deliver some printouts since Kenta hasn't attended class. The voice turns out to be Kenta's mother, and she invites them inside. They learn that Kenta's mother has tried to talk to him, but he hasn't opened up. Sako tells her that they should be the ones to talk to him since Kenta might feel more comfortable speaking with someone closer to his age. When they both attempt to talk to Kenta through the door, Sako gets insulted for being a flirt, and Yuwa also gets grilled for being one of Sako's girls. After calming each other down from the insults, they renew their efforts and admit that their homeroom teacher had asked them to try and talk to him. Sako tries to get Kenta to open up by saying he also likes anime, but Kenta accuses him of being a poser and tests him by mentioning some niche anime titles. Both Sako and Yuwa admit that they've never heard of those titles, but Yuwa asks if there's any anime or comics he thinks she might enjoy since she likes her brother's action comics. Kenta becomes nervous and says that his room is messy, so he doesn't want to show it to Yuwa. Yuwa suggests that they chat through the door like they are doing right now. Slowly, Kenta begins to talk with Yuwa, and Sako smiles, knowing that he brought the right person to lure Kenta out. He offers to leave the two of them alone, but this causes Kenta to lash out. Sensing that their progress is halted for now, Sako informs Kenta that they'll return next week. On the ride home, Sako asks Yuwa for her thoughts, and Yuwa tells him that she feels Kenta is afraid of something. They joke that Kenta seems to despise Sako, which makes them wonder how to proceed. As the sun begins to set, Sako starts thinking of different plans on how to get Kenta to talk to them. In his next attempt, he brings Yuko, who is thrilled to be riding on the back of the bike. He thinks that someone as honest as Yuko will be able to get Kenta to open up more. During the ride, Sako tells Yuko to sit properly since her skirt is fluttering around, but Yuko refuses, enjoying the ride. Yuko eventually settles and presses her body closer to Sako, saying she's sure things will work out just fine since Sako is her hero. Sako tells her that all she has to do is talk like usual, and he'll handle the rest. When they knock on Kenta's door again, Kenta learns that Yuwa isn't around and begins to think that she secretly hates him. Sako defends her, explaining that she just had practice but truly cares about Kenta. He then tells Kenta that he brought someone else today, and Yuko excitedly introduces herself. Kenta immediately accuses Yuko of using him to make herself look good in front of Sako, saying that helping Sako convince him to go to school will only make Sako like her more. Yuko feels that something is off with Kenta's hostility and asks if he possibly has a crush she confessed to but got rejected. This makes Kenta even more furious, so Yuko calmly explains that she strives hard to be Sako's number one, but will accept it if Sako has eyes on someone else. She says that Sako is naturally a good person, so there's no reason for her to be mad at him even if she ends up heartbroken. Kenta goes quiet, so Sako instructs Yuko to have some tea downstairs while he tries to talk to Kenta. After Yuko leaves, he tries to coax Kenta to open the door, but it doesn't work. He heads back downstairs and apologizes to Kenta's mother. Sako then steps outside, right below Kenta's window, and suddenly swings at it with his bat. Kenta stares at him in shock as Sako gives him a confident smile, telling him it's time for them to start getting to know each other. After breaking the window, Saku sets his bat to the side and takes a seat in front of Kenta. Saku urges him to vent, and surprisingly, Kenta does. He complains about how popular kids tend to look down on unpopular geeks. He wishes people would take the time to talk and get to know them. Saku sighs and agrees that some people are born with immense talent, but even with those talents, people like his friends still make sure to nurture them. Kenta argues that he's sure people with talent work hard too, and that makes it more difficult for people like him who don't have any. Saku reasons that hard work eventually becomes skill and that everyone can achieve that. He also tells him that just getting into the university they're in already means he has an edge over others. Kenta weakly argues that he still has trouble communicating with people. Saku tells him it's easy to learn how to communicate and even gives him helpful phrases he can use to join conversations. He tries to get Kenta to practice by saying that he suddenly feels tired, hinting that Kenta should add something. Getting the hint, Kenta asks why, and soon they engage in a simple back and forth about visual novels. Saku claps his hands, congratulating Kenta on maintaining a conversation. Kenta gets irritated, thinking that Saku had just made fun of him, but Saku reassures him that he is telling the truth. Kenta accuses him of not really being into visual novels. To prove he's telling the truth, Saku starts naming some unusual visual novels which happen to be titles Kenta owns. Kenta remains unconvinced, saying that Saku could just be reading the names, so he makes Saku explain the plot of one of the titles. Saku decides to explain the plot as he was told. Meanwhile, Kenta's mother and Yuko are downstairs having tea. Sensing that Kenta's mother is uneasy, Muko compliments the tea she prepared for them. Kenta stares at Saku in disbelief since Saku just described the story perfectly. Saku says that while he doesn't look like it, he enjoys reading. However, it took him an entire week to read everything. Kenta asks why he even bothered to do that. Saku tells him that he hates people who don't try to understand anything. He explains that the purpose of communication is to understand others and, in turn, to be understood. Saku points out that both Yua and Yuko have been making an effort to learn more about him. Saku encourages Kenta to be more open. Even if he doesn't understand a topic, he can always ask. He then hints that Kenta is the one blocking others from understanding him. Saku then walks over to Kenta's bookshelf and pulls out one of the books. He begins to tell a story about a man blessed with good looks who worked hard to excel in both school and sports. Soon, the man rose above everyone in both fields but still remained humble and kind. His popularity brought trouble with some of his peers who kept trying to bring him down by exaggerating his small faults. Eventually, they got to him, so the man decided to become ordinary. He believed that by doing so, people would stop paying attention to him. Kenta becomes curious and asks if the man's plan worked. Saku reveals that it did not, and people began criticizing him even more. A teacher then approached the man and told him that there are people who are given many gifts by God. Those people are meant to lead others. Those words changed the man's perspective, and he began working hard again. The man eventually decided that all he needed to do was live beautifully. He resolved to become someone no one could reach, but who still looked after people. Kenta asks who the man is supposed to be, and Saku confidently declares that the man in his story is actually him. He admits that he made up 90% of the story. Kenta isn't sure what to feel about it and even wonders what the remaining 10% of truth is. He calms down and admits that he had treated Saku and the others unfairly. Saku then decides to ask him about his definition of normies. Kenta says that normies are the ones who have it easy in life. This causes Saku to ask if Kenta considers him a normie, and Kenta confirms that he does. Saku explains that he doesn't have it easy at all since people insult him daily. Kenta quickly apologizes and says that Saku is different, but there are popular kids who clearly act high and mighty. Saku agrees but says he's grateful that his group is filled with nice people, which Kenta can't help but agree with as well. Saku tells him that there's nothing wrong with showing off as long as it isn't causing harm to others. Kenta asks if it's true that Saku has it easy when it comes to love. Saku admits that he is popular, but that also puts him in a position where he can easily become the bad guy. He reveals that it's painful because even if he wants to keep the friendship, nothing will ever be the same. Kenta thinks it might be safe to talk to Saku about his problem, but Saku suddenly announces that he already knows what's going on. He says that Kenta was part of some sort of club, and there was a girl who was nice to him. Kenta fell in love with her, but the girl was actually in love with another person, which led Kenta to fear human relationships. He eventually gave up on going to school. Saku asks if there's anything he missed, and Kenta admits that he was harshly rejected by the girl. Saku becomes invested and sympathizes with him, which makes Kenta open up even more. Yuko arrives at the door holding refreshments but decides to leave them outside so she won't interrupt. She returns to the kitchen and tells Kenta's mother that it sounds like the boys are getting along. Saku learns that the girl's name is Miki and that Kenta no longer has feelings for her. Kenta agrees to go back to school, but only if Saku guides him. Saku flatly refuses, saying he doesn't want to hang out with Kenta every day and that Kenta should carve his own path. However, Saku agrees to help him for the first 3 weeks, but after that, Kenta needs to be able to do things on his own. They decide on a goal for him, and that is for his old friends to see him in a new light. Saku agrees with the goal but warns him that badmouthing girls won't get him anywhere. Kenta admits that he's afraid of leaving his room, but Saku manages to convince him that the outside world is better because out there, he actually has a good chance of experiencing what it's like to feel Yuko's 3D chest in real life. He manages to get Kenta really excited about the idea before flatly shooting it down, claiming that Yuko's chest belongs to him. Kenta leaves his room and apologizes to his mother and to Yuko, who is more than happy to finally meet him. She tells Kenta to take a shower so she can cut his hair and give him a fresh look for school. By sundown, Yuko begins snipping away at Kenta's hair in the yard while Saku gives him pointers on how he can communicate in school. He also suggests that it would probably be good if Kenta started a diet. Taking Kenta's phone, he tells Kenta that he's banned from using social media until he learns how to properly vent his frustrations instead of badmouthing people online. As Yuko finishes up, Saku can't help but think about how progressive the day has been. Even Kenta, though nervous, looks excited to change and start a new life. In the evening, Yuko and Saku stop by a park to chat. Yuko is curious about how Saku bought Kenta out of his room, and Saku plainly tells her that he just told Kenta to find a different girl to like. Yuko fondly recalls how frank Saku had been during their first meeting and gushes as she talks about it. Saku feels a little disheartened, not wanting to recall that particular day. Yuko admits that she hopes Kenta will open up someday because she would like to learn more about him. Saku muses that being able to enjoy one's youth is all about learning how to stand up and live your life while dealing with problems. The next day, Kenta freezes just outside the classroom as his nerves get the best of him. Saku reassures him that everything will be fine since he's already started to change. Opening the classroom door, Saku swings an arm around Kenta and loudly introduces him to the class. Kenta is shocked by such a bold introduction and wonders why Saku is even telling the entire class about his reason for not attending school. Saku reassures him that he needs to be laughed at first before he can assimilate into the crowd. As if getting the hint, Yuzuki playfully tells Saku that he just told the entire class a juicy secret after asking everyone to keep quiet about it. Soon, all of Saku's friends and the rest of the class begin joining in, joking and asking Kenta to join them and tell this story. Kenta stares at the class in shock. He had assumed his first day would be awkward, but people are already talking to him. Saku tells him how it's important to take a joke and gently pushes Kenta forward. Taking a chance, Kenta lightly talks about how he got the wrong signals from a girl he liked, especially when she gave him her towel. Kaito quickly agrees that any man would have thought the same, but Haru playfully adds that if she were to lend Kaito her towel, she wouldn't want it back because it would stink. This leads to playful banter between Kaito and Haru, which confuses Kenta. Saku explains that those are just his friends joking around and that there's a clear line between joking and bullying, which is important to know when learning how to communicate effectively. Kenta feels uneasy about the thought of being bullied, but Saku says that if that ever happens, he will always have his back. During lunch, Saku's group stares curiously at Kenta's meal, and Kenta admits he is on a diet since Saku told him to do so. The girls quickly understand and sympathize with him, but Kaito is curious why Kenta needs to go on a diet. Kenta tells the story of how Miki, a girl from his otaku club, dumped him. Kaito decides to imagine the story with Yua and Yuzuki as stand-ins, and Saku notices the girls speaking in different dialect to hide a threat toward Kaito. Kenta continues explaining how he got the wrong idea and decided to ask Miki out, only to be insulted and rejected. It turns out Miki liked the club's president and was only using him to make her crush jealous. It worked, and once she and the president started dating, Kenta was left behind to be bullied and mocked by everyone for trying his chances with someone out of his league. Kazuki thinks Kenta's desire to change comes from wanting revenge. The group finds that Kenta being honest about his feelings and trying to change for the better is a sign of strength and that he's on the right path. They all give him encouraging words, promising to be his friends moving forward. When Kenta is about to join them in their cheer, they suddenly withdraw their hands, but Saku tells him they're only teasing before giving him a fist bump, making everyone laugh. Later, Kazuki confronts Saku and gives his honest opinion about Kenta. He says that Kenta is still closed off and that the change Saku wants won't happen overnight. However, Saku sticks to his belief, choosing to keep his faith that Kenta will change. Saku reports Kenta's progress to Korra, who says it's just like him to make such an over-the-top introduction. However, Saku wants to talk about something else. Korra jokes that he doesn't have money to lend, but Saku only sighs and asks what Korra thinks about living true to oneself. Korra considers the question and tells Saku that not everyone is born with a life compass, So most people look to someone they admire and feel that following them is the right way to live. He encourages Saku to follow and trust his own compass. Saku wonders if his compass points to the sky. Korra thanks Saku for his hard work, but when Saku asks for his reward, Korra makes up an excuse that he needs to leave right away. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.